All right, so what we're gonna go over is the developer partner focus group, my notes and the recap on the little Zoom meeting that myself and a couple of other PUBG partners partook in. I guess I can go ahead and say who it was. It was Sasha, Matthias, and myself. And Wacky Jackie was supposed to be involved. Something came up last minute. He couldn't make it to the meeting. So the whole idea was the developers reached out to us and asked if we wanted to be, part of this kind of focus group. They were going to send us a list of questions, and the questions range from a bunch of different topics like gunplay, the PUBG labs mode, balance questions, how do we feel about like the current meta, what's our opinion on like the meta shift from the AUG nerf and the Dragunov buff and the Mark 12. So just kind of a lot of overarching questions. They were just looking to get our opinion on it, and then they were also going to be giving us their feedback, their opinion, and their input as to why they made a lot of the changes that they did and kind of what they want to do going forward. And so I've had a lot of y'all ask me details from the meeting. I've been meaning to record this kind of highlight, and so this is what we're going to do today. We'll go over all the stuff that you kind of need to know from it. Now there was a bunch of stuff that we covered, so we're not going to cover every single thing because it was like a 2.5 hour Zoom call. It was actually around like 10 a.m. on like a couple Fridays ago, but it was midnight their time, so that they were up really late in Korea to do this this Zoom meeting for us, which was really cool of them. They even had like their translator online. Like it was a whole deal, and cameras and all the whole nine. So it was cool. Fun thing to be a part of, and hopefully they do more things like that. And hopefully we see some of the implementations of some of our ideas. That'd also be kind of neat. So we'll go over, I highlighted kind of the important questions and the important feedback. So we'll go over those things here. Okay. And then if you guys are watching this live, obviously we're going to go through one by one. If you're watching this on YouTube, whenever I get to edit this video, I'll put timestamps down below of what topics or what times you can jump to whatever topic you'd like to see discussed. Okay, so again, just a high level recap. It was me and two other PUBG partners, and then it was like 3 or 4 of the PUBG developers, and like we're talking like the actual like lead in-game developer, the developers that were over like the implementation of all in-game aspects of PUBG, the developers who were in charge of like the SMG rebalances, the thermal scopes, like all of that kind of stuff. These are people who have like first-hand knowledge of what's going on over there at PUBG. So it says, first question, do you think we should offer IBR, TDM, and other modes for the SMG testing rather than just normal BR? So this is asking about the recent PUBG Labs mode when they tested the SMG rebalance, and they were just saying, hey, do you think the way we did it was the right way? Short and sweet is my answer was no. I think you kind of had to use certain tests for your goal or the feature that's being tested. So in our case, we were testing the SMG rebalance. I think it made the most sense to do like a team deathmatch. That way you could just start, spawn, choose any of the SMGs and just get a lot of rinse and repeat practice with them to see how they felt, how the damage buffs were, how the recoil nerfs were, the distance drop off, all that kind of stuff. Get a lot of repeat tests there. I thought that would have been important to be able to do. In which you couldn't do that. It was just on a regular battle royale mode. All of the guns spawned, so you had like ARs, snipers, DMRs, and SMGs in the world. It took a long time to find people and fight people to really test out the weapon. So to me, it just wasn't as useful as it could have been. So hopefully in the future they look to add like TDM if they're going to test a gun feature, or like for the Rondo thing with the digging the hole feature. That mode, that should be tested in a BR mode. So they should add that to a labs mode where we could test that in a lab setting, a lab scenario. That would make the most sense to me. And then another thing to kind of keep in mind as we go through these questions, it'll become more obvious when I get to some of those details, but not a lot of, most of the feedback that I'm going to be giving is based on my use case of these features in PUBG. And that's kind of coming from a North American player who also typically will play FPP, like solo, duos, and squads. And so if you don't already know, we are one of the smaller player bases in PUBG, like by a large margin, one of the smallest player bases in PUBG. A lot of PUBG's decision making is top down, and it is in favor of their larger player bases, like the Asia player base. So just kind of keep that in mind. Like this most recent labs test mode didn't work for me, for most people in North America, because you loaded up against like, you know, probably a lot of bots, very few real people, and the lobbies took forever to queue up and fill up. But if you played the mode in Asia, you probably got insta queues and there was 100 real people, and you could like really test out the features much more thoroughly. So just kind of keep that in mind. Okay, question number 2, what do you think of our current direction in the SMG rebalance to advance the usability of less popular weapons, as well as offer more choices to low skilled users? So it's kind of a 2-part question. My answer to them was essentially that making less popular weapons better is not a bad idea to start from. However, offering easier ways for lower skilled players to kill a higher skilled player, I don't think is a good design direction. Basically, that would like dilute the experience and degrade the need to improve at the game if you can just always kind of take the more easy way out. So, you know, if you're a better player and you're getting killed by a less skilled player, there's obviously a lot of factors that could be involved in there. It could be like the circle, the RNG, are you getting third party? Did you just miss your shots? You know, what a whole bunch of things could be in there. But one thing that I don't think should be in there for a game like PUBG that's really designed around this very, very unique gunplay experience is diluting that gunplay experience and making weapons way easier to control than what they would need to be, so that lower skilled players kind of have a favor. I don't think that's really the best way to do that. For the SMG balance, here's what the dev said. This is kind of an interesting little fact. The Asia region kind of hates SMGs. SMGs are severely underused in Asia. They primarily prefer 7.62 weapons. For the North America in the West, SMGs have a much higher use rate, and we apparently typically prefer the 5.56 weapons. So I thought that was interesting that it was like there was a regional difference where the Asia player base prefers 7.62 and really never uses SMGs, and then our region typically uses way more SMGs, and then when we use like ARs, it's 5.56 that we prefer. So I don't know what that says, but it's just an interesting fact that they made sure to bring up and kind of point out to us. So by the fact that them saying SMGs is underused for Asia, that links back to what I was saying earlier. Their larger player base shows statistically that they are not using SMGs. And so PUBG's thinking from a developer standpoint, this whole class of weaponry is barely used. Why is it barely used? Maybe we needed to do something to buff that barely used weapon class. And we're screaming like over here, no, like all of the like brand new players use the SMGs, which is fine because it's an easy to use weapon, but don't make the gun like stronger and even easier to use and more powerful for no reason. So our opinion is kind of like contradicting what their statistics are showing them, because we're the small little region, and you know most of their players are going, no, we don't ever use SMGs because they don't work for, you know, a lot of the engagements. So if you don't already know, what they are changing for SMGs are, and it's not every SMG, but the ones that they are changing, the base damage is being increased for a couple of them. Almost all of the SMGs have their recoil reduced, so making it even easier to use. They're having a higher damage drop off, so over long distances, the bullets will do less damage, and they're buffing the movement speed of the SMG, where you're able to run with an SMG in your hand at the same speed as if you had no guns in your hand. So currently in PUBG, if you don't know, your player runs faster with no guns in your hand versus if you had like an assault rifle or an LMG or whatever. When this update gets pushed to live servers, which is not until like June, the SMG will run the same speed as no guns in the hand. I'll also be putting out a video going over all the SMG changes in a future video. All right, what they're not changing, but what they offered as examples of something that they would look at to change, and they asked for our opinion on, were the following. Decreasing the SMG ammo weight. I thought that was an interesting one. Increasing the SMG aim punch. Increasing the movement speed of the SMGs. Buffing the weapons for a faster gunfight pace, i.e. Increasing the reloading speed, the ADS speed, the weapon swapping speed. Based on the stats that they showed us, there's a lot of graphs they showed, and we couldn't they didn't allow us to record any of the meetings, so we couldn't like take pictures or photographs or videos or whatever, or audio. But you know, obviously they're allowing us to talk about all the details from it. Based on a lot of the graphs that they showed, they used weapon usage, weapon win rate. Then they did it post labs mode and pre labs mode. So before they rolled out the SMG update, they showed us one set of statistics showing the usage and win rate of SMGs. Then they did, all right, in the labs mode, here was the usage rate and win rate of the SMGs. After, in the labs mode, the SMG win rate was about 50-50 compared to assault rifles, which they said that's kind of what they were looking for, that they were comfortable with seeing those numbers. It was like 45 to 53%, depending on what SMG you looked at. However, what I was thinking and saying is that didn't really consider multiple factors. And we brought up a couple of those points. I'll go over them in a second. But before I do that, I just want to go back to some of the things that they offered as examples that they could change. For me, the SMG aim punch, that just completely should be out of the question. Aim punch is already a very weird mechanic in PUBG. I'll go into a little more detail on that later, but I definitely would not want them to do anything with that. The SMG ammo weight is an interesting one, because one of the problems with the SMGs is that you don't find ammo late game a lot of the times because many people don't run SMGs. So if you do run an SMG and you get into, you know, the last couple of phases and you're running low on ammo, a lot of times it can be tough and hard to even find ammo for the gun because nobody's carrying them. So if they decrease the ammo weight of the SMGs, that would allow you to kind of hoard more ammo early game to carry you through to that mid to late game. So that's not a bad idea, I don't think. Further increase in the movement speed, I don't really think that's necessary personally. Buffing the weapons for faster gunfight pace, so like reloading the gun faster, ADSing faster, like aiming down sight faster, and even swapping to your weapon faster. To me, those are actually interesting changes that they could do to the SMG that would buff them for these close range fights without actually making the gun easier to shoot and easier to use. I wouldn't be mad at any of those types of changes if they looked into that, because like the ADS speed, you can already put a thumb grip, you know, on your gun to increase the ADS speed. Maybe SMGs could have a feature where they already aim down the sight faster, or as fast as a thumb grip without the need for the grip. So there could be like some cool little things they could do with the SMGs to buff them without like making them like these really easy to use limb damage, you know, weapons. Okay. So going back to a few of the stats that they showed us, and then my rebuttal to some of their stats were as follows. So I guess I brought on here, I'll give you my overall opinion first. So let me give you my overall opinion on SMGs. So in general, I think that the SMG should be close range dominant weapons like a shotgun is. They should shine early game. They should shine into the late phase city endings, like exactly how a shotgun you think would be. So if it was me, if I was like making the changes, I would have a higher base damage on all of the SMGs. So their starting damage, make it a higher number, whatever that number might be for different SMGs, it'll depend. Then do a very sharp damage drop off after 50 meters. So after 50 meters of range, the bullet starts to do progressively way less damage, so that you can use it during these medium to long distance spray engagements, but it's going to be severely less effective than an assault rifle would be, or a DMR or something like that. I also think the recoil doesn't need to be adjusted at all in the SMGs. I think most of them are already incredibly easy to control, even for relatively new players. So I don't think reducing the recoil is really going to benefit anybody. The faster movement speed, like making the gun or making your character move faster with the gun, I don't think that like breaks the game one way or the other. To me, I don't think it needs it. But if that was something that like the community was like, yeah, we want to see that, I think that'd be like an okay thing to do. But the biggest thing, like the kind of elephant in the room with the SMG, is the limb damage multiplier. And so I think that has to be removed. There's really no way it can stay in the game and like the integrity of the SMG be left intact, because for those that don't know, the limb damage multiplier simply means that of all of the weapon classes in PUBG, you have, you know, pistols, SMGs, shotguns, assault rifles, LMGs, snipers. All of those weapons apply different levels of damage depending on what body part they hit, but all of them do less damage when you hit the arms and the legs, your limbs. SMGs though get I think it's about 30% bonus damage increase when you hit arms and legs. So you are rewarded for less accurate shots, so only specifically with SMGs. And so that's what limb damage multiplier is, and that's why I think it needs to be removed. So I think if they made those changes to the SMG, you know, higher base damage, damage drop off, don't touch the recoil, make your player move faster, get rid of limb damage multiplier. If they did that, I think that's going to require the players to make a tactical decision, depending on like their next movements in the game, their next play style, how they want to play out the rest of that game. You kind of have to be thinking of the circle. Is it going to end in a field, or do you think the circle is going to end in a city? If it's going to end in a field and you go with an SMG and your enemy's kept an assault rifle, well, then you're going to be at a disadvantage, and rightfully so, you should be. But if the circle goes to a city and you keep an SMG, or you pick up an SMG once you're in the city, then you're going to be you're going to have the advantage over your enemies who have, you know, assault rifles or whatever they have. So the balance in the choice is, I think, the important part, instead of just defaulting to like a one type weapon fits all, you know. Yo, Lee, I'm going over all of the dev PUBG partner focus group meeting notes. So yeah, I'm not going to be interacting with chat right now. I'm recording a video, giving you guys all the details here. I will catch up with you guys after we go through all the notes. So my rebuttal to what their proposed changes were and what their current changes are right now. Number one, the SMGs are less likely to be picked up because by mid to late game, your chances of finding the ammo are way lower. And that's only because people are using SMGs less in late game. So naturally, less people are going to win with the SMG. And so that was to their stat that they said SMGs don't have a high win rate right now. And that's because people aren't going to keep an SMG into the late game. So you might drop hot and pick up an SMG and dominate the hot drop with it, which would mean it's a really good gun if you're able to kill a lot of people with the gun, no matter what part of the game you're playing, whether it's early, mid, or late. But because you don't get the chicken dinner with the gun, PUBG sees the stat and they say, oh, well, SMGs don't have a high win rate, so that might mean the gun's not performing well, when in reality the gun's performing really well. It's just not being used all the way through to that late stage in the game because ammo is hard to find and some of the other factors that we discussed. Number two, the SMGs are more frequently picked up and used early game because the hot drops, you know, they're superior at close range, high rate of fire, ease of recoil, you don't really need the attachments, faster movement speed, limb damage multiplier, etc. And then number three, for the labs mode specifically, they brought up that labs mode stat saying, well, in labs mode, the win rate for the SMGs went up, you know, pretty significantly. It went up to like 50%, where 50% of the people that were winning labs modes were winning it with SMGs and not other guns. And then my rebuttal to that, well, you made labs mode specifically to intend to test the SMG rebalance. So like naturally you would expect people to pick up the SMGs and use them throughout the game to, you know, specifically test out that new weapon feature. So like obviously you're going to get more people playing with SMGs, more people are going to win the games because they're using the SMGs more frequently. And so I don't think that necessarily means that the changes that they made are directly correlating with why people were winning more games. I think it's more of like a well, you made the mode to test SMG, so of course more people are going to use it and more people are going to win it because they're using it, if that makes sense. Yeah, P90 is an SMG. Crate only though, we're talking about world spawn only. All right, their next question, the dev's next question. How does AUG performance or usability feel after the nerfing of the gun? Did it change player's choice for 7.62 or 5.56? Again, keep in mind, Asia loves 7.62, the West loves 5.56, apparently. So overall, I thought more people chose to go back to the barrel 7.62, at least in the discussions that I've had with friends and other players and just even community members I've run into in like our random duos or random squads. People will definitely know that the barrel is the better gun now, but a lot of people still, you know, prefer to go with the 5.56. They're more used to the gun. It's a little bit easier to control, and it also pairs better with the dominant DMR right now, which is the Mark 12. So like even though the barrel hits harder, and the Dragunov has, you know, great capabilities, a lot of people still kind of default to AUG Mark 12. So I think it's in a good spot right now in terms of like the 5.56 versus 7.62 discussion. I don't think you're ever really at a disadvantage if you decide to go with a barrel Dragunov or a barrel SLR. Like you're going to have good trade-offs and bad trade-offs there, and same thing with the 5.56. So I think it's right now, I think it's at a good spot. It's a good balance of the ammo type. PUBG, next question: how did the introduction of Dragunov affect the DMR choices? So I said earlier, when the Dragunov was first introduced, it was too strong. You know, it had like the one-shot potential at like a super far range. It had a crit chance. It had like all kinds of weird stuff going on with it. Then they nerfed the damage range, got rid of the crit chance, but then buffed the fire rate. So they made a couple changes to it since then. And I currently think the Dragunov is in an okay spot. There is a risk reward. So like if you fall out of the 105 meter range, headshot range, it does become significantly worse than the competition, the other DMRs like the Mark 12 or the SLR, or even the Mini 14 for that matter. However, having said that, I do think that the one-shot damage of the Dragunov should be reduced to like 50 meters or less instead of like 105 meters. So it does hurt being in a compound fight, in being able to just get one shot by a DMR, especially when that DMR can now shoot pretty fast, and it has, you know, 20 bullets in an extended magazine. So your enemy has a lot of chances to hit you in the head, and they only got to hit you once. You know, if you have a bolt, you got one, you got to rechamber two. You know, so it's a big trade-off. So I do think the Dragunov should be reduced a lower distance for the one-shot potential. I do think the one-shot potential is needed though, because if it's removed completely, then the gun basically becomes worthless. The SLR is then better in every scenario, and then the Mark 12 is also better in every scenario. All right, their next question: do you think shotgun nerfing affected the early engagements? And by the way, all these questions, if you guys have input, you know, leave them in the comments down below too, because I will be giving feedback to PUBG about this video. So if you guys have any good input to give, feel free to give it. So do I think the shotgun nerfing affected the early engagement? So I think that's pretty well obvious now. Yes, the shotguns definitely are still very strong early game. You know, they're still dominant early game, but it does feel like they're in a much better balanced position right now, where you're not getting one shot from like across the map, whereas before, you know, you could be full health level 3 gear and it felt like you were just getting one shot no matter what. You know, it was really hard to counter a shotgun. Now I do think they are in a better position. They're still very strong and very powerful. They're scary up close, which is where they should be scary. So I think that's really good. The only feedback I gave to PUBG for shotguns is that the movement penalty, I think should be inflicted with a higher movement penalty. So if you're strafing side to side, you should have an accuracy penalty, and then more specifically, if you're jumping with the shotgun, you should have a significant accuracy penalty, so that you can't just, you know, jump over a ledge and just like insta peek, get all of your damage out and then get right back into cover. I think that's a little bit unbalanced, because if you have an assault rifle or any other gun, you know, when you jump, your accuracy is all over the place. So I think that one little thing can be tweaked, and otherwise I think shotguns are pretty good right now. PUBG said this year we are planning gunplay updates once every 2 months or every season. What do you think about that? And we've already seen that. So we got the AKM SCAR buff right now. We're in April, and then 2 months from now, June, we're going to see the SMG rebalance. So their plan is to do gunplay balances every 2 months. Now, and that doesn't mean balances and changes won't happen in between them, but that's like the big timeline changes. So our feedback, or my feedback, was I think it's a very reasonable time frame for weapon changes and meta balances. My only question I brought to them was like, what if they were to release the AKM SCAR buff, and then we found out like, you know, day 2 that it was broken, or like it needed more or needed less or whatever? Like, are they going to wait 2 more months to address the update that they just did? And they said no, like if something is like breaking the game or it didn't work as intended or just isn't performing the way we thought it was going to perform, we will work on fixes in between that 2-month interval. And they actually showed us that they already will do that with the Dragunov. That was released in test server with the crit chance, and that crit chance never even made it to live server. So they pulled it and nerfed it even before it went to live server. Then they buffed it shortly after that once they figured out it wasn't quite in the right spot. So I'm pretty comfortable with what they're saying. Every 2 months we'll get weapon balance changes. So I like that idea. What do you think about the occasional PUBG updates designed to avoid giving too much advantage on a certain gun choice that shift the PUBG gun meta? So I think this question they're kind of asking, like, what do you think about us forcing the meta changes, forcing people to stop picking up the barrel, forcing people to stop picking up the AUG? How they pulled out the AUG from the crate, those kind of big shifts. My response to them was this: I think it's an incredibly delicate balance for a game like PUBG to avoid having like meta weapons. The metas will form and shift without any dev input as it is, and the key thing for me is enhancing the sandbox that's PUBG. Focus on making many viable weapons and fun weapons, and then allow the community through the use of play tests and just like messing around with different weapon types and attachments to determine what the meta is and should be. So as a developer, I think their time would be best used to this is like the analogy I gave, is to build the best race course you can build, as opposed to trying to design the best race car for a race course. So if you're designing like a Forza Motorsports or something like that, right, to give the players the best experience, make the best race course, and then let the players design the best suspension and all the modifications they can do to their car to make it best for that course. And I kind of feel like that's how PUBG should think about it, is that they have a sandbox that's PUBG, and so they need to develop the best sandbox that is, so the best environments, the best types of attachments you could potentially put on weapons, the best interactable environment opportunities, and then let the meta kind of form itself with the players. And usually that'll still peak out at some point. You'll have a meta that forms, and usually it's dictated by esports players. The best players at the game at the highest level, they'll find the 1% weapon that does the best, and then that'll kind of trickle down from there. And I think that's natural. You can't avoid that. If they want to interject changes that change that meta at some point, I don't think that's a bad thing either. I just don't think they should go after a design input to initially create and standardize a meta. Their next question was, do you have any suggestions for gunplay, such as rebalancing regarding the aim punch and less used weapons, which are frequently talked about in the PUBG user community? So I gave a number of feedback options here. Number one, my first thing I brought to them was thermals. I said the thermal scopes, they need a looking at. They need to get nerfed. I didn't say remove them. I said they need to get nerfed. And we just so happened to be talking to the developer that had the idea for the thermal scope. So the lead in-game developer, it was his idea for the thermal scope. And so when I went on my little spiel about thermal scopes and how, like, at its core, it's a fun item. The idea of having a thermal scope, especially on night mode Vikendi, it's fun. It makes sense. It's an interesting, unique item to have in the game. In the day mode, it doesn't really make sense, but that's neither here nor there. I said the main problem with thermals, and a lot of you guys watching this video already know my stance on this. I've put out multiple videos and gameplay videos showing it, is that the thermals ruin the tactical utility of PUBG, which is smoke grenades. If anybody's ever watched PUBG esports or just played PUBG, your best defensive mechanic in PUBG is smoke grenades, and that allows you to block off line of sight and create barriers between you and an enemy, to either allow you to focus on a different enemy or to just give you time to reset, heal, whatever you got to do. And the thermals, as you all know, can see right through a smoke grenade, and that's problem number one. It can see clean as day through a smoke grenade from across the map. And then number two, there is no counter to a thermal scope. with many things in video games, and PUBG specifically, there's always counters to strong items. We were just talking about, like last game, the BRDM and the Lynx AMR. The BRDM is this incredibly powerful tank that can fit you and your squad. Guess what? The Lynx AMR was designed specifically to counter the BRDM. It can shoot through the BRDM window, so that has a direct counter. The Lynx AMR is this really powerful sniper rifle, but it only has 10 bullets, so there's like a natural nerf and balance to the weapons. The thermal scopes have infinite battery life. They can pretty much see infinite range, like for all intents and purposes. You can see across the map, you know? It does get harder to shoot, obviously, the longer distance it is, but like, let's be real, for all intents and purposes, it's infinite range. There's infinite time battery on it. Nothing can block its vision. And you can put it on any gun type, so it's not like it only works on a bolter or whatever. It can literally go on SMG, AR, shotgun, sniper rifles, LMGs. Any gun can take it. And not to mention, when PUBG thought they nerfed it, what they really did was buff it. They took it out of the world spawn, and now it's only found in the care packages or the bear caves, which are all over the map too. So if you are one of the few people now that get that item and you make it to late game, you can really abuse the heck out of it and kill people who otherwise would have no idea that you even have a thermoscope. So they have no idea that you can even potentially see them if they throw a smoke grenade, and you just kind of ruin the competitive integrity of late game PUBG. So I went on that little spiel explaining to PUBG my my opinion on thermoscope, and unfortunately the lead developer, he was kind of taken aback by the opinion, it seemed like, and you know, he said that it was his idea to put the thermoscope in the game, and based on the statistics for the thermoscope, it does not have a crazy high win rate, so they think it's in an okay place. And that again goes back to PUBG going off of a lot of these graphs and stats to base their decision making, instead of like how the weapons and features feel in the game. And hopefully that was part of the reason for them to have this focus group meeting, is to like actually hear from people who play the game like every day how these things work in the game, because they obviously don't play it as much as we do. They're spending time developing the game, not playing the game at such a high level as we are. So their take back opinion on that was they didn't think thermals needed a nerf at this time. They thought they were in an okay place, but they said they would look at our feedback and, you know, maybe make some changes there. I didn't get a promising warm and fuzzy from it, so unfortunately that's kind of where that sits. For aim punch, I said that the aim punch, I think in PUBG needs to get nerfed. If you don't know what aim punch is, it's like flinch in Call of Duty. Like if you're aiming down sight and you get shot, your gun will like jump up, so your aim will get punched up and off target. And I don't think that like aim punch needs to get removed necessarily, because it does feel realistic. If you're, you know, scoped in on somebody and you get shot, you're probably going to flinch and you're going to get off aim. I get it, but PUBG's aim punch is not consistent with the damage that you receive. I think it's more RNG based, whereby you could get a certain level of aim punch with a very small amount of damage or a very high amount of damage. So like if I shoot you with a pistol, you could get the same amount of aim punch as I get if you shoot me with a sniper rifle, or vice versa. So it just needs to be consistent. It needs to be like a direct correlation. If you receive 10 damage, then you should get X percentage of aim punch. Or if you receive, you know, 50 damage, you should get whatever percentage of aim punch that is. It needs to make it consistent across the board. And then in terms of weapon buffs and balances, I brought up the SKS, my favorite DMR. I would love to see that gun get some love. They did say the SKS is currently being looked at for what kind of buffs they can make to increase its usability. For the crossbow, I've been saying this thing for ages and it never gets touched, but the crossbow should do one of two things. Either A, they should make the crossbow a sidearm, make it a small pistol-sized crossbow, so that you don't have to sacrifice a primary weapon for it, because a crossbow does one shot a level 3 helmet, so it's an incredibly strong weapon. It's, you know, dead silent. There's no way to hear where the shot is coming from. So it'd be really nice if you could just kind of sidearm it with a couple arrows. That'd be cheeky. Or if they keep it as a primary weapon, you should be able to load multiple arrows at a time. So like 2 or 3 arrows at a time. That way you didn't have to shoot it, reload it, shoot it, reload it. I think that would be a nice buff to the gun. And then the other thing, which I don't know if they can even really do this, is being able to pick up your arrows once you shoot them. Like if you find the arrow in the body or on the ground, pick it back up and conserve the ammo. I think that'd be kind of cool. And then, excuse me, my last weapon balance buff thing I said was the LMG. I think all LMG should have canted sight. The DP28 and then the MG3 specific is one in my favorite gun of the game. I think the MG3 needs to have a canted sight option too, because I like to rock a 6x on it. It'd be nice to have a canted sight. You can just kind of swap back and forth. Not a big thing, but just something like kind of small. That would be a nice quality of life to have. And then their last question: what are some gunplay updates that you anticipate or think are the most needed in 2024? So for anticipation, the zip line that they tease in their video, that to me seems like the next coolest thing that PUBG could implement. A lot of people, like I've talked to Bob and other people, said like, I really don't think that's going to be a good item if they add it, and they've gave some good feedback as to why they thought that. I just think it could be a very fun item, the zip line, and it could be a nice way to push buildings, which are, you know, definitely at least for me, a problem when you can just like hold an angle and you kind of have the advantage. If you could push in multiple directions with the zip line, that'd be really cool. UE5 to Unreal Engine 5, which we should be getting that next year. I don't think we're going to get that this year. And then the implementation of PUBG modding, which is not going to come until we get UE5. So where you can modify versions of the game and really create your own experiences. Those 3 things are what I'm looking forward to the most. Things that need attention, like gunplay balances and that kind of thing. The self AED, I said I think at this point the self AED needs to be removed. You know, I've had obviously hundreds of times when I've used it and abused it, and then I've had it happen to me. It's never felt like a fun or rewarding item, especially in solos. And it just, in my opinion, it just kind of promotes more flushing than anything, because now you kind of have to assume everybody has a self AED, and so you get insta flushed, which, you know, may not seem like a problem for some people, but it does suck when you get insta flush, or you have to insta flush because you're like, oh, that person might just revive for free. Then the whole flushing thing brings on the blue chip revive system. Your blue chips, I don't think should be able to be stolen. I think only your teammates should be able to pick up your blue chip. And last but not least, they need to increase buff the recall system, whereby you're able to come back way faster than you currently are. So they made a great change recently. They put the blue chip revive on all 8x8 maps, which was a huge win for us, for most PUBG players. I know some of you, not a lot of, some of you don't like the revive system. I get it. I understand why, but it was definitely a most requested feature. Finally got added to all maps, which is nice to see. And now we just need to see the timer reduced, where, you know, if you get knocked and flushed on a hot drop in the first like literal 10 seconds of the game, you're not having to wait 6 minutes to get back into a game, when, you know, 6 minutes is like a third of the whole lobby the queue time being dead. So that's a few things I would like to see in terms of like what needs attention. Again, for all these questions, let me know what you thought about your comments below. I'll kind of recap the questions. So what about the different modes? PUBG Labs mode, what's your opinion on those? What do you think about the SMG rebalancing? What do you think about the AUG? Did it balance 5.56, 7.62? What do you think about the Dragunov? How about the shotguns? They're going to do gunplay updates every 2 months. Do you think it's too much, too little? What about PUBG making meta changing additions? And then what suggestions do you have for gunplay, balancing, or any features that might need tweaking? Sound off in the comments, or if you're on Twitch here in the chat here. Scar L with a 3x is the new OP meta. I disagree. It's not OP. It's not meta, but it is way better now, and I think it's a much more viable pickup. The AUG is still the better weapon statistically, but I'm glad to see the Scar getting some love. Yo, Lee, I agree. I don't think there should be like a supremely dominant weapon in one category. I think that there should be trade-offs for all those sorts of things. Zach, yeah, that's a good point in terms of how to balance the thermals. That there's a lot of different ways that could balance the thermal. Limited battery life, which isn't really a counter. It's just like a self-limiting item. It's like the Lynx AMR. The 10 bullets isn't a counter to the Lynx, but it is a self-limiting nerf to the item, which would not be a bad move. I don't think that should be the thing, but wouldn't be a bad move. Having smoke grenades on Vikendi that block thermals, that's also a potential addition. I like the idea of that. Rather than verbal feedback, they just looked at charts for balancing. Wow. Yeah, well, I mean, I don't know what other feedback they got. You know, so this PUBG partner focus group was only with 3 partners, and it was supposed to be 4, but it would have been EU and NA. So I know they've already done this with the Korean partners. I don't know how many times. This was our first time getting this opportunity. So I would assume the Korean partners are getting more, I don't know if attention is the right word, but you know, they're getting more focused on like getting their feedback incorporated and that kind of thing. So they might have already given other feedback. What will the upcoming extraction shooter be like? Will it take over from COD DMZ mode? So the extraction shooter is a Project Black Budget. It's basically going to be PUBG gameplay with an extraction shooter, but we don't know any more details other than that. So we don't know like what's the environment going to be like. Is it going to be like a zombie thing? Is it going to be a DayZ? Is it going to be like a city? What was that game with the dark zone or whatever? Not Rainbow Six, the Division. Like it might be something like that. We really don't know yet. Or if it's zombies, yeah, we don't know. Did they do the same with console partners as well as PC partners for the slight difference? I don't know if they've had any meetings with console specifically. I don't think they would separate it any further. I mean, I technically was a console player before. You know, I started on PUBG console, but I have been out of the console game for a couple years now. Glitch mechanic and the fact that you can steal them, it sucks when yours get stolen, but it also gives you the ability to remove someone from the lobby. Win some, lose some IMO. Okay, I do see both sides of it, Jimmy. I do, because if you get knocked and your teammate isn't around long enough for someone to take your blue chip deserves to get stolen, right? I get that mindset. However, you shouldn't be able just to dump the blue chip and literally hide it from the enemy. That's cheesy. If you take the blue chip should stay on your body like a dog tag. And the only way for the enemy to get it back is if they kill you. Because how many times have you had that happen where your chip gets stolen, your teammate kills the person that stole your chip, and you go to their loot box just to find they dumped it in God knows what bush, and it's gone forever. There's no map ping for it. It doesn't glow. There's no way to get it back. That to me, it just allows griefing in the game, which is stupid. This little notes I just read to you guys, these are my condensed version answers to them. Like I said, I was in a 2-hour meeting with them, and it was open table. So like they would ask a question and they would go, okay, who wants to give feedback? And then like I would start and I would go on my spiel, my feedback to them. And then Matthias would go, and then Sasha would go. And so it was a long drawn out process. And then on top of that, I emailed Dan my written up like thorough responses for all those questions. So PUBG has like all of my input. Trust me. I gave him the whole 9. So like all the different ways they could balance the revive mechanic and all that stuff. If they can take your chip, then everyone should have a chip radar. Yeah. I mean, you should be able to know, right? I mean, they used to have that. They literally like PUBG does sometimes they do things in a group and then they end up removing a part of that group and then things don't make sense anymore. Like, a lot of people probably don't remember. Like a lot of brand new players that come in now don't remember what a year and a half ago, they had the first item they brought in was the blue chip detector. Remember that? And the blue chip detector detected your blue chip. So while you were alive, your blue chip was pinging on this little, screen. And if you died, your blue chip was still pinging on the screen. And so you could see where all the blue chips were. But obviously people were like, well, wait a minute, this is just like a heartbeat sensor from Call of Duty. This isn't good for the game. But it would be good to find your teammate's blue chip, right? Like, so they couldn't just throw it in a bush. So, but then they had to get rid of that item because people don't like the blue chip detector. So now you're stuck with blue chips. Instead, they could have just done the defibrillator revive mechanic and be done with it. A slot penalty for at least taking a chip. Well, I think that's the problem, is that when you take a chip, it actually weighs in your capacity for your backpack. So there have been instances when I would collect multiple blue chips, like just trolling around, like bot blue chips, have like 5 bot blue chips in my backpack, and then I couldn't pick up other items because these blue chips were taking this. So then I dropped the chips. Like, the chip should just go in an unoccupied inventory spot where once you get it, you can't drop it. You got it for life and it doesn't take up any space. So that way, if you die, if someone kills you, they can go, oh, here's the blue chip for my teammate. Like, and it'd be fine, you know? I don't think that would be a problem at all. All right, so that's the recap for the PUBG Partner Focus Group. Again, this is like not a sponsored thing or nothing like that. This is like PUBG legitimately just asking for our feedback, our genuine feedback on all of these features and changes and like what suggestions we have. So hopefully this isn't the first and last, and hopefully we actually see some of the feedback implemented in future updates. And then if PUBG does, you know, allow us to give them more one-on-one interactions like this, I'll obviously keep you guys up to date on that kind of stuff. And like I said, I will be following up with PUBG from this focus group. So let me know in the comments below in this video what feedback you have, and I will forward that to PUBG. So thank you guys for watching. Leave a like if you're on YouTube. Make sure you subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you on the next one. Peace.